Hey students, this is Mr. Moore here with your week 21 economic notes. As a reminder to the students in my class, this economics class will cover both microeconomic principles and macroeconomic principles. But to start this year off, after we do a quick introduction with week 19, we're going to dive into a lot of microeconomic principles and really try to make economics seem logical, reasonable, and essential to anybody who wants to be successful in life. I've entitled these notes Money Management and Real World Economics, and I really want to focus in on what you need to know to live your own life successfully. Um, what I really want to do is help students understand that if you want to be successful in any kind of relationship, you need to be smart with your money. Now, some of you will choose to get married in life, and some of you won't. But whether you're going to have a partner, whether you're going to have roommates, whether you're going to have a family, whether you're going to be married, you really need to know how to manage your finances, or things will fall apart. You can go Google this anytime you want, but you'll find that the number one reason why people have divorce or marital problems is generally over finances. Most people fall in love, and that's why they get married. But what they don't understand is it takes a lot of practical principles to stay married. I've been married for over 20 years, and some of the things that I've learned is when your kids are born, set up a bank account and start setting aside money for them. My oldest daughter just started college, and I'm grateful that I started literally a couple weeks after she was born. I set up a bank account and started putting money in there, saving for my daughter's future. I have another daughter this year who's a senior, and she also has a bank account set up from the minute she was born. And I say literally the minute she was born. No, of course it was a couple weeks after, but literally as soon as I got her social security number, I went in, set up a bank account for her, and started putting in just a little bit of money, uh, you know, as much as I could, so that when she graduates, she's got a little bit of money to go to college and things like that. So I've done that for all of my kids. One of the best things that I think I've done for them financially, when each of my kids turned 13 years old, we could set them up with a teen bank account and get them a debit card. As soon as I was able to, I set them up with some electronic payments like Google Pay or Apple Pay or Venmo, as soon as I could, so that I could teach them how to send and receive money electronically. Teaching them how to budget their bank accounts. And then, of course, when my kids turn 18, I'm going to set them up on a credit card so they can start establishing credit scores. I guess my point is this: that if your parents haven't taught you financial things, that's one of the homeworks that you should do right now. Talk to your parents about setting up a bank account with a debit card, making sure you set up a savings account. So if you get birthday money, Christmas money, you do jobs, even around the neighborhood, even if you don't have a job working out at a place, of employment. Um, that's a whole nother step right there. Just working around your neighborhood is different than getting a job where you have to fill out W-2 forms and you get taxes taken out and you get a paycheck and all those kind of things. But there's all kinds of things that I've learned. One of the other things I think that I'll mention before I move on, I always want to give some practical tips economically. And one of the other practical tips is this: that when you first move out and you first get married, you've got to remember that you shouldn't compare your lifestyle to what your parents have. I've seen a couple of my close friends who literally their marriage fell apart because of finances. One particular friend, the lady, she wanted to have the nice house, the nice furniture, the nice car, the nice clothes, all like her parents had. But when my friend married her, of course they had entry level jobs, and they were still going to college and those kind of things. And I really think that contributed a lot to destroying their relationship. So I think that we just got to keep these things in mind, that being practical and not expecting to have the lifestyle your parents have right when you're married. Um, and I've also seen other, family members and things that have struggled with different kinds of finances. And again, those things can cause unnecessary tension in a relationship. And so that's just a little 5 minute reminder of some practical economics. I'm not just a teacher. I'm a real dude in the real world. And this year I've tried to share with you a lot of experiences from my own life. And so I think sometimes when people get to know a teacher and they think, well, what does he know? He's just a teacher. Well, I'm not just a teacher. I've worked on farms, done farm jobs, hauling hay and hauling pipe. I worked in a meat packing plant, slaughtering pigs and cattle and sheep. So I've had some real jobs. In fact, that's one of the major motivations for me to go to college, was working in a meat packing plant in between my junior and senior year. And when you're up to your elbows in guts, and you're working really hard, it's really hard manual labor, and it's not very fun work. And you start to think, man, I wonder what I could do if I got a job that paid better than this. This is fine for the summer when I'm in high school, but there's no way I want to do this forever. I've also had some really cool jobs that didn't pay a ton, but were super fun. Working at a restaurant up in Alaska, and working with my brother at a rafting company. That was fun. I also worked at a couple of summer camps when I was in college and right before. That was fun. I didn't make a ton of money working at summer camps, but I got to work with students, and that kind of is what led me to become a teacher. There are some jobs that pay well, and there are some jobs that are super rewarding. And so that's maybe another tip to think about. Um, yes, we all want to make money, but money by itself is not going to bring happiness. So there's a different level. Do you feel rewarded in what you do? Those are all things to keep in mind. Throughout this course, each time when I start off my notes each week, I'm going to try to give you some practical thoughts that I've learned economically from different jobs that I've had, from working at a tuxedo shop, renting tuxedos for people's weddings or quinceañeras, or selling suits to businessmen, to working at some high schools, to working at a restaurant. I worked at A&W flipping burgers when I was in college. Now that was an okay job for the time, but certainly not something you're going to make a career out of. So I've had everything from factory jobs to some really awesome working up in between Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks for the summer, living in a teepee, at a summer camp. So all kinds of really great jobs that have helped hone my knowledge of what it means to be economically successful. Um, I'm going to share this several times throughout the semester. This is public information. You can go, just so you can see this right here. I'm going to keep recording, but I'm going to just show you what I'm talking about. You can go to avusd.org. That's the Apple Valley Unified School District. So you can see this is public information. And you can go down to the Human Resource Department, and you can see what teachers are paid like in the district. So if you come down to the salary schedule, it'll bring up the most recent salary schedule for teachers in Apple Valley Unified School District. And that is, of course, what I'm sharing with you right here. So this is not like private information, but this is what school teachers make in Apple Valley Unified. And I just wanted to point out or reiterate how significant your level of education is. And this is just one example for teachers. But you'll find similar things like this in different professions, that the more education you have, the more you make on average. Now, that's not true in every profession. And there are some jobs out there that don't require a college education. In fact, there are some jobs out there that you can get, with zero college, you can make more money than I do. But you have to have a skill. So if you're really good at welding, or you're really good at auto mechanics, and you have some certification and some proof of skills, then you can get some great jobs out there. But this is just an example of what a person might need to survive here in Apple Valley, California. This right here, of course, shows you how much a teacher makes per day that they work, and how much they make per month. Okay. And this would be split up over 12 months, even though teachers only work a 180-day contract. It's actually a 184-day contract, 180 days with students, and 4 days that we have teacher work days, 2 at the beginning, 1 in the middle, and 1 at the end. And this kind of gives you an idea of an average, well, not average, but a salary. And then you can kind of see what the average would be if you want to survive. So I've asked this question before, but I'm going to propose it again. What are you worth per hour? And what can you do to make yourself worth more per hour? What does minimum wage really mean? Remember, if you're out there with no skills and a high school diploma, or not even a high school diploma, no college education, you're going to probably be working for minimum wage, which really means the lowest legal amount that somebody can pay you, that an employer can pay you as an employee. So teachers are generally not considered rich. So if you're thinking, wow, that's a ton of money, it's good. It's not bad. I enjoy my lifestyle, but certainly not rich. But just kind of look at these numbers and think, what do I want to make per year? What's my salary income want to be? Take out a calculator and do a little calculation. If you're earning, $15, let's just say you're earning good money. Okay, you're earning $15 an hour, and you're working 40 hours per week. That's $600 per week. So I'm going to repeat that again. If you're working at $15 an hour and you're working full time, that's 40 hours per week. That's pretty standard. That's about $600 per week. Some teachers are making more than $600 per day, not per week. And then if you you kind of times that by 4, you're talking about $2,400 per month. That's working minimum wage, $2,400, and so that's really bad. It's really hard to survive on minimum wage. Okay, and then if you times that by 12, to kind of get an average of how much you'd make per year, you'd be talking about 28,000 or 29,000. Maybe let's round up just for sake. You get a Christmas bonus, you get some overtime. Let's say you make 30,000 per year. That's not even close to what a teacher's making because they have a college degree. So working for minimum wage is going to be just as hard of work, and you're going to make less money. Just one of the reasons why we're trying to promote college education. That's why we as teachers, and that's why people in general push and promote college education. So what are you going to need to spend your money on? Last week we talked about buying a house or buying a car. Besides those big things that are going to affect you so much, there are other things that are a constant, and those are utility bills. And some students aren't aware of this because they live in their home and their parents take care of everything. How much does it cost to have a hot water heater, your clothes dryer, your furnace during the winter, or maybe you have a gas stove? That's a gas bill, you know. This is going to be different for everybody depending on how big your house is and which appliances run on gas, but it could be $50, $60, $70 a month. Again, it all depends. It could be as low as 20 or 30. Especially during the summer where you're using the gas bill is going to affect your hot water heater for showers, and hot water out of the sink and maybe a stove, but you're not running the furnace all the time like you are in the winter. So again, how much is a gas bill? It's impossible for me to tell you, but here's some homework you should do. You should ask your parents. Consider the size of house you live in right now. How much do they pay for a gas bill? That's really learning about what it means to become an adult. How about an electric bill? How much does your family use electricity per month? $100 per month? Some people in the summer, especially here in Apple Valley, could spend a couple $100 if they're running the AC all the time. I mean, it's not out of control to think of $300 during the summer for an electricity bill. Or maybe you get a swamp cooler, and it brings the cost way down because you're not running AC. So the lights, the fridge, TV, Wi-Fi, charging stuff, especially air conditioning, that's the biggest one. So that's why some people invest in solar to really cut the costs, because in the summertime, the electric bill can get out of control. The trash bill. Maybe you never even thought about this, but if you want to have waste removed from your property, it costs money every single month. 50 bucks every 2 months is a typical bill here in Apple Valley. So that's about $25 per month. Not a lot, but you got to consider all of these utilities. Water and sewage. A lot of people in Apple Valley actually have septic tanks. So when you flush or your drain, it goes into a pit on your property and leaches back into the earth. But we still have to pay for water. And if you have any kind of grass on your property, water bills can get astronomical here in Apple Valley. If you live in a different place, like I have some in-laws that live up in Idaho, and they pay like a flat rate of like, say, $25 per month, and they can use all the water they want. It doesn't matter. Just like a flat rate. Here in Apple Valley, they charge you, per unit of water, and it can get really expensive. So keeping in mind toilets and washing clothes and a lawn care or septic maintenance or plumbing, those are all things that you've got to pay attention to. And then there's other kind of things. Phone bills. These are often separate, but your internet or your phone bill, sometimes they're on the same bill. Sometimes they could be separate. And a lot of people have done away with landlines. Some people also clump entertainment into their internet, into their phone bill, because they're paying for cable. But that really gets into a whole different question of needs versus wants. And I'm going to remind you of that again. So entertainment, do you have to have it? Well, all of us need some way to de-stress and to wind down at the end of the day. So these are bills that we have to pay attention to. And sometimes we have to cut certain things that are wants in order to really focus on those things that are needs. Now, if we come back to where we started in this lecture, we're reminding ourselves of really what kind of a lifestyle do we want to live. And that's why we're talking about these practical and microeconomic principles. If you look at these charts right here, what are they really telling us? This is how much a person makes on a weekly average. And if you look right here at the level of education, the average, and this is pulled, the source is the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is a government agency that tries to pull data. So it's a government agency that pulls data on the health and strength of an economy. And what they found by interviewing people, by doing surveys, and looking at statistics, we can see that in general, the more education you get, the more you make per week. Okay. Again, I'm going to pull up some data that I just talked about a second ago, and I just ran the numbers. If you make $15 per hour times 40 hours per week, that's minimum wage, you're making $600 per week. What if you found a job that paid $20 per week? Sorry, $20 per hour at 40 hours per week, that's $800. Okay. Again, if you times that by 4 to like kind of get a monthly average, that would bump you up to $3,200. And then if you times that by 12, now you're talking around $40,000 per year. Again, that's not going to be at a healthy place. If you're making a minimum wage, it's going to be very difficult to have the lifestyle that you want. Okay, so the more education you get in general, the more money you make, the higher wage you get. Again, the other side of this spectrum to look at is the unemployment rate. And it seems like the more education you have, then you can clearly see the more likely you are to have a job. So the less education you have, the less skills you have, the higher the unemployment rate. Now, we're going to talk about something that's unavoidable in your life, and it's unavoidable in my life, and that's taxes. And this is something that all of us need to be more aware of. There are different kinds of taxes. When you go to the store and you buy stuff, and say you're going to buy some kind of electronic that costs $99.99, you don't pay $99.99. You're going to pay 120-ish or something, whatever it is. It depends on where you buy it, in what state. Even different counties in California have different sales tax rates. And these sales tax, of course, the reason that they apply that after you've made the purchases is because that goes straight to the government. So the company's like, we're not charging that to you. We're just charging you $99.99. The extra money you're paying us is going straight to the government. And so in the United States, we really like to separate what's taxes and what's actually the cost of an item. There's property taxes that if you own any property, whether that's a house or whether that's just open land, you have to pay a property tax to California. If you don't, you can lose that piece of land or the property. Like if I own my house and I paid the whole thing off, but I stop paying my property tax, the government can come in and seize my property. Income tax is probably the most famous. I remember when I got my first job in between my junior and senior year, I had a huge wake up call when it comes to income taxes, because I pulled out a calculator just like I was doing in these notes, and I was kind of punching in. That time, I was making $7 an hour, and I worked for 20 hours that week. So the math should have been really simple. If I worked 20 hours at $7 an hour, I should have $140. But the boss gives me a check, and the check was like for 120, and I was like, man, $20, that's my money. And the guy was like, well, that's taxes, and showed me on the little printout. He's like, this is how much money's going to federal taxes, this is how much money's going to state taxes. And the truth is, it gets even harder as you make more money. Imagine, say you made $5,000 one month because you worked that hard, and you only get a check for 4,000. And you might be like, Mr. Moore, that's kind of exaggerating. It's not. Say you make $5,000. There's lots of times the government, both the state and the federal, and then you've got Social Security, and then you got Medicare and Medicaid and Medi-Cal and all these kind of things they start slapping on there, and pretty soon you're out $1,000 and you haven't even spent anything. So that's what really frustrates people when it comes to taxes. Everybody wants free money, but there's no such thing as free money. The government doesn't have any money. They only have what they take from us or what they go into debt to try to do. So if you ever get excited about stimulus checks, remember, um, you can't just make money out of nothing. There's always going to be consequences. So the IRS is the Internal Revenue Service, and they're the ones who collect government for the federal, government. And they audit businesses and they audit people if you don't file your taxes properly. Tax day is typically April 15th, although sometimes the government will extend that deadline or change it if there are, extenuating circumstances. But you do have to pay fees if you don't pay your taxes on time. Lots of times, tax day is good because people have already had money taken out of their paychecks each week. And so when they get that back, when they file their taxes. In other words, they overpaid. Some people will say that's not a good thing because it's your money and then the government's keeping that. But tax day is not always a bad thing. if you're married and you have a couple of kids, you might even get money back on tax day because you paid too much out of your paycheck each month, and you'll get a tax return. If you owe money, it sucks. If you get that tax return, it always feels nice. Okay. So there's tax returns. When you go into a job, like not just, if you're working for your uncle and he just gives you some cash because you worked at a construction site firm or whatever, that's different. But if you actually go and get in a job where you're employed at a grocery store, Starbucks, at a restaurant, waiting tables, you might have to fill out tax forms like a W-2 form. The W-2 is like your employer asks you, how many people are you responsible for? And then that kind of dictates how much tax they take out of your paycheck each week. Um, Around April, or hopefully earlier, January, February, you can actually file your federal taxes. A 1040 EZ is for somebody who's like single and just has a simple job, nothing complex. You don't own a bunch of property. You don't own your own business. If your taxes are simple, you can do like a 1040 EZ. If you want to like itemize and try to get the best tax rates possible, you might file a 1040A. Some people pay somebody else to do their taxes, and some people buy software to do their taxes, but it's something that all of us are going to have to do. I've sat down with, my older kids that have jobs and try to walk them through on what that means to file taxes. And when you're doing taxes, there are standard deductions, and it kind of has to do with how many people you're responsible for. So if you're living at home and your parents are paying all the bills, they're going to claim you as a dependent. But once you get out on your own, you might have your own dependents. And so when you're young, filing like standard deductions is easier, pretty simple. When you get a little older and your life gets a little more complicated, it might be better to itemize your deductions so that you're paying less taxes. And if you're getting like nervous and thinking, holy crap, that's why we have classes like this, and hopefully people ask questions, and you won't remember everything, but that's why you want to get this introductory lesson to start to hear these words and to learn about these things. And again, like I said, a lot of people just pay companies, or they go buy tax prep software like TurboTax, or Credit Karma offers it for free, but nothing's for free, right? So they're gathering your information. Sometimes people like TurboTax will offer a 1040 EZ for free. That way you get used to their software, and when you get a little older, you're like, well, I always use TurboTax, and then you're kind of willing to pay to get it done. So remember, nothing's ever free. There are other things that could be taken out. They're not taxes per se, but they kind of get clumped into that same generality that coming out of your paycheck, if that's what I'm trying to say. Things like for Social Security. There are other options. You can choose to have some of your own money taken out and maybe invested for you. That would be like an IRA or a 401k kind of a thing, or Roth IRA. So those are just some things. Remember, when you're making money, and we're going to rewind our brains here for a second. When we're making money, we've got to remember that what it says right here, if I'm making 100,000, there's no way I'm actually going to have $8,432 to spend if that's where I'm at on the pay scale. Or say maybe you just graduated from college and say each month you're supposed to get 4,929. I'm actually not going to have anywhere close to that. Probably under 4,000 coming from this job. Serious amounts of money are going to be taken out in all of these things that we're talking about. And that's before you even have to pay utilities and things like that. So again, the more money you make, the more comfortable your life is going to be. I thought this was kind of funny. I saw this little, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily call it a meme, but it's kind of one of those kind of things of making light or a joke of something that's serious. And it says, the government says, you owe us money. It's called taxes. And then the person says, well, how much do I owe? And the government says, you have to figure that out. That's what you have to do when you do taxes. And then you say, so I just pay what I want? Government, no. We know exactly how much you owe, but you have to guess that number too. And then you're like, well, what if I get it wrong? And the government says, well, you go to prison. I mean, you can go to prison if you're cheating on your taxes, right? The only certain thing in life are death and taxes. Um, we've got to remind ourselves that there's a huge difference between needs and wants. And I know I talked about this before, but I think that we need to come back to this every time we talk about personal finance and budgeting. There are things that we absolutely need, like food. However, there is a difference between buying organic or buying like Whole Foods and buying brand name food versus the generic food. So sometimes people like they go to buy cereal and there's a box of cereal for $5 or $6 for a box of cereal. They could get twice as much cereal that tastes just as good if they buy an off brand. It's not like it's the generic brand. It's not the name label. So even with food, there are choices that could be made. Yes, we all need food, but sometimes we want organic. Well, organic's more expensive. So we have to pay attention. You could go and spend like $5 and make 5 sandwiches, or you could go to Subway and buy one sandwich for $5. So if you have somebody else make it versus buying the stuff at a grocery store, it can change the whole experience big time. Same thing with shelter. We need somewhere to live, but maybe some of us just want to have a big house. And sometimes we stretch our budget too far. And also, you got to pay attention to if your house is bigger, then you're going to pay more in utilities. It's not just for the house itself. All of these things could be applied. Yes, we need clothes, but maybe we don't need a $150 pair of shoes. Maybe the $20 pair of shoe from Ross, or we buy it online on sale at Amazon, and it's going to cover us just as good as the fancy label. So remember, brand names, designer labels, that's a want. You need clothes, but you got to look at your budget and see how you're doing it. And all of these things could apply, right? So needs are essentials, wants are desires, Needs are essential for survival, wants are not, Needs do not change over time, wants do, okay? And you can kind of keep in mind these things, All individuals have the same basic needs, but wants vary, right? And that really helps us keep track of what's going on in our lives. One of the most important things that you need to learn is the difference between a debit card and a credit card. A debit card is money in a bank account that you actually have. And as you spend that money from the debit card, the store or the online website or wherever you give your information at the gas pump, money is taken directly out of your bank account to the business that you provided that information for. A credit card, the money is you're spending money you don't have, but you're promising to pay it back. Now, some people will tell you that credit cards are evil and horrible, and that's not true. I love credit cards. I have tons of credit cards. I use them as often as I can, but here's the big difference. I only use as much money as I actually have. I never actually use credit. I use the credit card because they give me rewards, okay, and it also builds my credit score. But I never spend more than I actually have, and that's the difference. If you use a credit card like a credit card, you can get yourself into deep trouble. You start buying things that you want instead of things that you need. However, if you use a credit card like a debit card, then it can be very beneficial. It can raise your credit score and you can get lots of rewards. And that's some of the things that it's talking about. You really, really should look at these charts. I mean, there's just some great things, okay? to pay attention to. Credit cards are not evil, but if you don't have any self-control and you don't know how to manage your money, they can destroy you. So here's my number one opinion that you should do. If you already have a bank account, you need to make sure you check it at least monthly, making sure that you can account for everything that's spent. You need to be a record keeping person if you want to be successful financially. If you are a minor that's under 18, you're going to want to talk to your parents and have them help you set up, like a teen account. It's a joint account, right? Or a custodial account. Okay. If you are over 18, you should get into the bank right away. And if you're like, well, I don't even have any money, it doesn't matter. Even if you got $10, you go set up a bank account and you get it started. Make sure you get a bank account that's not going to charge you a fee every month. There's plenty of banks out there that won't charge you a fee, for a basic checking account with a debit card and a savings. Okay. And then you can start saving your money and you can start learning how to balance a budget. What's your passion? What do you love? Can you make money doing it? Some people say that the key to happiness is to find a way to get paid for doing something you love. Remember, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. Or would you rather just have stability? So, why did I put the Jim Gaffigan food geography map of the United States? Because he's a great example of somebody who gets paid for doing what he loves. He's a comedian. And he travels around the country and around the world making people laugh. And he's found a way to get paid doing that. Not all of us can be famous. Not all of us can be, that type of a person. He's risked a lot, right? He gets paid if people laugh. There are jobs that are less risky, but they're also less rewarding. So those are some things that we want to keep in mind as we end the lesson this week. The learning goal for the third week of the economics class is that students will understand that different methods can be used to allocate goods and services. People acting individually or collectively through a government must choose which methods to use to allocate different kinds of goods and services. Each of us get to make individual choices, and we have to separate needs and wants. There are a ton of great review videos on budgeting, on how to get loans, and paying attention to things like how wealth is created. Got some great review videos at the end of my notes each week. Thanks for being here. This is week 21 on money management and real world economics.